Just like a spark that's breaking out. Can't make a stop, can't turn back now. We know that there's no room for doubt. No, we can't turn back now. I see danger in your eyes. They know we'll burn down the night. Only just like the sunrise. You know that we gonna light it up tonight. We gonna light it up tonight. We gonna light it up just like the sunrise. We gonna light it up now. Just like a spark that's breaking out.
Sorry about that. Welcome to the HVAC Guide for Homeowners YouTube channel live show where we talk about all things HVAC, giving you tips I'd give to my own mom. We will be answering some of your questions live. Sometimes we are joined by other pros in the chat who might know answers to questions that I don't. And finally, we have breakout segments where we go over funny clips, industry news, and goofy inventions. But before we get the show started with tonight's astonishing story in the news, let's take a moment to pay the bills and thank the sponsor of this show. I wanted to take a quick break from the video and thank the sponsor of this video, AeroSeal. Leaky ductwork is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, energy wasters in most homes in the United States. And my favorite way of fixing that problem is AeroSeal. They'll come into your home, they'll test your ductwork and how leaky it is. They'll seal all the ductwork with a machine, and then they'll test it again and make sure that you got what you paid for. Customers have reported a significant savings on their energy bills after using AeroSeal. I'll put a link down in the description of this video. Thanks again to AeroSeal, and now let's get back to the video. So before we get to the story that I want to share with you guys, we were supposed to have a guest tonight, and she did not join us. I'm not sure why. So hopefully everything is okay on her end. So just wanted to let you guys know that tonight you're just going to see this fat face. So I'm a little out of whack. I was not planning to be doing a solo show, but I think we're going to be fine. We've done this before. And again, if you have any heating and air questions, it looks like Steve's here. So hello to him and hello to Gary. Good to see you guys. Feel free to drop a hello in the chat, where you're located in the country, and we will certainly say hello back. In the meantime, I do want to share a quick story tonight. This story comes from News 13 WBTW out of South Carolina. It's a very quick story. And I'll show you guys I want to show you the article first. One person was displaced Wednesday morning after a fire at their home on Cycad Drive. According to Horry County Fire and Rescue, HCFR was dispatched at 7:30 a.m. and the fire was isolated to some of the HVAC equipment at the home. No injuries were reported. So thank God for that. The American Red Cross of South Carolina will offer assistance to displaced resident. And so thank you to those folks for doing that. I hate these articles because it's almost like we've read multiple articles like this. We've had multiple stories on our show where we talk about fires in the heating and air equipment. And it's almost like kind of, nonchalant, another fire. It's the HVAC equipment again. And something is wrong, right? This is not okay. This is not nonchalant. Thank goodness no one was hurt, but this is not okay. Houses catching on fire, houses burning down because of the HVAC equipment, it should go without saying. It should be common sense, but this is not okay. If things are being done properly, installed properly, and maintained properly, they would not be catching on fire. So something is wrong here. There's a reason it caught on fire, and we need to not be so nonchalant about this. There should be outrage, in my opinion. We should be able to go to sleep at night and not worry that there be a such thing as electrical fires, right? That's a big thing in our, in the trades, and then HVAC fires as well. This is not okay. And I'd like to know why it caught on fire, right? This is not nonchalant. I'd like to know why. Let me see if I can get this story here to play. Bear with me here.
Well, new at noon, one person was displaced after an early morning house fire in Horry County. Horry County Fire Rescue says crews were called out at around 7:30 this morning to a home on Cycad Drive. That's near Tanger Outlets on Highway 501 in Myrtle Beach. The fire was isolated to HVAC.
Wait. Look at that. That is a beautiful home. That's a beautiful neighborhood. Look at that house behind it. Depending on the market, I mean, there's parts of the country, a house like that would be probably $500,000, if not more, $1 million home. Look at the lawn. I mean, a beautiful home, beautiful neighborhood, and just nonchalant, caught on fire. There should be outrage over this, in my opinion.
Equipment, and no injuries were reported. The American Red Cross of South Carolina is helping that homeowner.
So I think she said Cycad Drive. Is that how she pronounced that? So anyway, I'll get off of that. I think that's what stuck out to me the most about that article, though. Just another fire. It was in the HVAC, So anyway, just crazy. Let's get to our chat here. We've got some little bit of a buzz, and nice to see. We haven't had a buzz. I've been waiting on that heat to get here. Our show always kind of blows up a little bit when the heat's here and folks don't have AC. By gosh, they want to hear from a heat and air guy all of a sudden, right? So thank you to you guys that are here, even when the weather's not so crazy. Emery says, hope you can have a makeup show with Jennifer. Me too. I'm not sure why she's not here. Hopefully everything's okay. Ryan says, hey, from the Southeast. Steve says, Jen is an amazing human being. She does a lot of cool things. I wanted to talk to her about that tonight. So hopefully, we can find out what's going on and hopefully have her on. Nicholas says, Josh, good evening. I'm looking forward to your show tonight. Thanks, pal. Good to have you. Ryan says, hey, Josh, any tangible benefits to the blue antimicrobial flex ductwork? Let's look this up, pal. Blue antimicrobial flex duct. Share this tab instead. I'll just be completely honest with you. I have not installed this before. It says blue antimicrobial flex ducts are made to resist microbial growth. Usually when they say microbial growth, we all know what that means. And in fact, this article does say such as mold, bacteria, fungi, and mildew. They are often used in HVAC systems as supply and return ducts and are available in a variety of diameters. Some blue antimicrobial flex ducts include, let's see, the JPL AM Blue. This high quality duct is made with an inner core treated with Aegean natural silver and has a blue vapor barrier around it. It's available in diameters 4 to 20 inches and is UL listed, labeled class 1. I have not installed any of this stuff. I've installed a lot of flex duct, but not this particular antimicrobial and I guess it's the silver that makes it antimicrobial. I've heard of people doing different metals. I remember guys saying you could drop, I believe it's a copper penny in a drain pan. And I remember guys talking about that, how it will inhibit microbial growth. I think it's a penny. Maybe it's a dime. I can't remember. Maybe one of you guys know. But this says it reduces the smell and growth of bacterial odors. Yeah, interesting. I've not used this stuff, man, to be completely honest with you. So I don't have much input on that front, but, I could certainly see instances where something like this could play a role, right? You could offer it as an upgrade to the homeowner, and they could at least sleep at night knowing that the ductwork they had installed is antimicrobial growth. So that's pretty good there. I'm just curious, have you used it, Ryan? So Steve says hello to all the guys. One here in Kentucky, electrical fire started at the dryer 230-volt plug. Yeah, we had one here in my local area a couple years ago. And the guy had said, yeah, I noticed when I would touch the outlets, the actual 120-volt outlets in my garage, they were hot to the touch. They were warm. And lo and behold, his house ended up burning down, and that's where they said the fire started. And so I wasn't okay with that. I'm always just super concerned when I hear those things, because I'm like, why didn't you get in front of that? Didn't you at least think that could be a risk? I don't know. To me, if you go in your house right now and something feels hot to the touch, realize, especially like I've seen like space heaters where you hold the plug and how warm they can get. Realize the wires inside that wall could also be getting warm, if not hot. So if it's hot to the touch, it could, there's no scientific data here. I can't sit here and say, well, if it's this degree temperature, but you should have more concerns on matters like that. Emery says, can you actually mix refrigerants? And if not, what are the problems with it? That's the $1 million question, Emery. It's the question I've always asked. It's the question that years ago when guys would say, well, you can't mix, R22 with one of these other refrigerants, knowing that we were going to be replacing it with a blended refrigerant. I would always ask, well, what happens if I mix it? I think ultimately when you take the EPA test to get your CFC 608 license, it's one of the things that they cover. Steve says you should not mix refrigerants. Some are mixes anyway. The mixed parts boil at different temperatures or glide. And that's the big thing here, right? I mean, that's one of the downsides to blended refrigerants anyway, fractionation and glide. But at the end of the day, I remember a company saying that a compressor had failed because a replacement refrigerant had been used in that R22 system. And I don't subscribe to that belief necessarily. Now, if they've got some sort of data to prove it, I'm not going to debate them on that, but it's still, I'm that guy, right? I'm that guy that always asks questions. I'm always like, oh, so, you're not supposed to do it, huh? Well, what happens if I do? R32 is in R454B refrigerant. R32 is in 410A refrigerant. What happens if I mix them? Ultimately, Steve's got the point though, right? Because of the fact that you don't know the actual blend at that point and what the measurements need to be, you don't know the percentage of each. And so because of that, they could be boiling at different temperatures, and it could be, you could really be causing damage to your system because it would be overcharged or undercharged, and you would have no way of knowing. Copper Viper is the best. Good to know. Good to know. Little plug there. This is great, guys. We got a little buzz going tonight. I appreciate you guys. We are rolling. It's like the old days again. Ryan says, what is a better ductwork system? Running trunks and splitting with Y's, or running trunks and branching from a mixing box? I'd love to hear some of you other pros chime in on that. I'm going to hold off on my answer to that, Ryan. I'm going to come back and see if anybody else has something to say on that matter. I just listened to a podcast on that exact topic this morning. Ryan says, no, I haven't used it, but I'm going to change my ductwork within the next year or so, and saw that when researching flex versus rigid metal. Yeah, I have not used it. I mean, let's be honest. A lot of folks, when they install these systems, they're going to be, ordering the least expensive thing. And I was probably no different. When I had my company, you order the materials to get the job done. And I don't even know that a sales rep ever approached me with that. I mean, that certainly could have been an upgrade. We could have said to the homeowner, hey, we can install Flex Duct for this price, or we've got this upgraded Flex and it's antimicrobial. I guarantee there would have been homeowners that would have jumped at that opportunity. That I don't know what the price difference is, but, if it's not that much more, they probably would have appreciated knowing that that was an upgrade that they could, that would have been offered to them. MO99 is a drop in just to top it off, and it's cheaper. Freon Leon. I like the name. Welcome to the show. Emery says, when did they decide to CFCs from air conditioning? CFCs from air. So if we're talking about HCFCs, like to get rid of the chlorine in the refrigerant, this was way back in 1987 during the Montreal Protocol is when they first started looking at the ozone and all that fun stuff. But if you're talking about HFCs and the GWP, well, that's been more recent. I'm not going to get into all the politics, but that's when a number of countries a few years ago looked at the Kigali Agreement. And then, of course, now we have the AIM Act in effect here because of the EPA. MO99 is junk. Oh, man, everybody's already – the shots are flying. I like Ford. You like Chevrolet. Steve says MO99 is junk. Steve, what do you like? What did you use as your replacement refrigerant for 22? All that started at the Supply House Talk. Junk is a lack of better word for that, Steve-O. Trunk line is the way to go. Single ducts. What are the pros and cons? I'm going to see if there's any more question or comments on the ductwork. Let me go back up here to Ryan's original question. Ryan, I think ultimately the answer to your question is, I was listening to a podcast this morning and they were talking about essentially when ductwork is laid out, how there is things you can do. Sure, you can dial in the static, right? So they were talking about how you could have one of these spider systems with a plenum and then all these ducts coming off of it. And you can take different static pressure readings all around that plenum and actually get different readings. And so what they were talking about is how static pressure actually does not directly correlate to airflow, or at least the distribution of that airflow. So you can have good static, but not necessarily good air distribution. And I hear guys say that all the time, and I just have to respectfully disagree. It's okay if you think that it's okay to do one of those spider systems. I just disagree. I hear that all the time. Guys will say, well, they're fine as long as you install manual dampers to balance the system, to balance the airflow. And my mind is, if you install the ductwork properly and you install it without any sort of restrictions or, the analogy they used this morning is imagine air as cars, so if you imagine a bunch of cars and they come flying into a box and they bounce into the back of that box, well, what are they going to do? They're going to bounce off. Whereas if you were to put, a Y instead of just a box there and actually, let that air, push around there with less restriction, less friction, then that air distribution would, go better throughout the house. And so I think that there's exceptions to every rule, but basically, as far as your question goes, I'm looking at Ys. I'm looking at trying to install that system in a manner to distribute that air and not add more friction. And, try to look at the whole setup from that standpoint, Let's see. Emery says, what are the pros and cons of mini split systems versus a standard split system? Well, that's a loaded question. I mean, first of all, mini split systems are typically going to be inverter driven. So that alone, they're going to be quieter. They're going to be more efficient. They're going to be more comfortable, right? A mini split also is going to be even more comfortable because of the zoning aspect. If you're talking about heads in every zone or even every room, depending on the layout of the system, it's going to be even more comfortable. Each zone being able to dial into the perfect temperature that the person in that room wants. And then finally, mini splits, if they're ductless mini splits, then now you're looking at things like duct loss is no longer a challenge. Now, if you do have duct work, little plug, tonight's sponsor of our show is AeroSeal. If you do have duct work, have that duct work tested, and AeroSeal is a good option to seal that ductwork if you do have a leak. So little plug there for tonight's sponsor. Freon Leon, I'm just going to call you Leon from now on, from trunk to boot. And Steve says, now you're just causing trouble. We do get some trolls in here sometime. I have not had to remove anyone from our chat except for one time. I had a guy get on here and started slinging names at one of our guests, and I didn't even make a big deal out of it. I just removed them. I don't have admins, so if you get removed, it's usually going to be me that removes you. So, but we all have thick skin here. Usually we can put up with it if it's not too bad. Leon says mini split filtration is non-existent. That is a good point. That's a good point. If you don't have a ducted system of some type and the filtration upgrades that you can get with a ducted system, that is certainly, something to take into consideration. It's one of the reasons why we did that YouTube video on the Daikin air purifier that I can try to track down the link in a little bit, but if you go through our link, you get $50 off of that. And but it's a a room filtration system that you can put in there in the room where the ducted system is and try to help clean that air better. But if you don't have that and you have a ductless mini split, the filters are less quality, right? They're paper thin, literally. So Gary says, my Mitsubishi split system with 410A actually has R32 in the mix. I did not know that. Yeah, so 410A, they knew what R32 was years ago. They knew what it was. They knew it was a good option. However, they also knew it was mildly flammable. And so while other countries went ahead and went down that path, we went a different route here in America, and we went with the high GWP blend of 410A refrigerant. And so what it is it's half R32 and half 125. And 125 is a horrible refrigerant. It's horrible efficiency, horrible heat transfer, but it's a great flame retardant. And so when you add it in there with the R32, it makes it an A1 refrigerant, which much less flammable. Leon says, that's what I do, round pipe to single runoffs. I don't use Y or cheese boxes. I feel like I've heard those boxes called all kinds of different terms. Steve got a kick out of that too. You guys are rolling tonight. Brian says R422B. So that's your favorite R422B. Is that the? Yeah, that's the new 22. Yeah, I've heard of a lot of guys using that. NU22. So they call it new 22. Leon says, yeah, these ductboard triangle boxes look like cheese blocks. I've seen a lot of those where we are. There was one house where it was like, we went in there. It wasn't a flip. It was a Fannie Mae foreclosure. And we went in that house, and I'm wanting to say they had like 7 of those guys. Like they came off and there was no hard duct. They came right off the end of the unit with round flex. They went to a big, what you're calling cheese box. And then they split that. And then they went to further down the line, and and instead of doing Ys or other options, They would have, I think it was like 7 of those guys. And I just remember taking pictures. I mean, who knows where they are now? I mean, we're talking years ago, probably 5 phones ago, but I just remember that house. I remember where it is. Big, beautiful house on the water over in Whitestone, Virginia. And the people that moved out trashed the place. I mean, they couldn't even give the house away. But when they were done with it, when Fannie Mae brought folks in like me to get everything back up to snuff, I was there for the heating and air, but there were other guys there to do the drywall and all that stuff. I mean, that house back then was, over $500,000. It's probably pushing $1 million now with the way all the prices are. And it was right there on the water there in Whitestone, right on the Chesapeake Bay. So it had its own little beach. I mean, it was a sweet house. I wanted it. I ain't gonna lie to you. Once they were done with it, I was like, wow, this is nice. Brian says mini split can have dehumidification issues. How they get efficient reheat on the new atmosphere from Daikin. If you run them in auto mode, you should not be having, unless they are just so oversized, you should not be having dehumidification issues. It's the guys that will adjust that fan. They take the ability of that system to ramp up and down. I did a whole video on that, talking about the how you need to leave that system in auto and allow that system to ramp up and down and run at a very low speed and still remove humidity. Steve says, how do they feel about the Remy Halo? Do you sell air quality products? How do you feel about the Remy Halo? So I sold my company, Steve, so I don't have any feelings about them now. I will say we never sold them at my company, but that was only because we offered some other options that were comparable. I have friends that love them. We always did the iWave that new Calgon made. And then of course we offered some filtration options and then of course UV options. So we never actually offered that particular product, but I do have friends that love it. Just Work HVAC. Good to see you. Welcome to the show. Ryan says, what do you think about gas tight newest line set alternative to copper for systems? Looks like the yoga pipe that came out years ago that only worked with ACs and not heat pumps. This works with both AC and heat pump. If it's the one I'm thinking about, there's one that came out not long ago that almost kind of looked like plastic, and it had like these compression looking fittings. Let's see. Yeah, I think that, no, this is something else. This is not gas tight brand. This is what I was talking about. See how it's almost like a plastic there? And then see the fittings are kind of like a compression fitting. And I have not used this stuff, but I remember one of the guys about this stuff said they liked it. There's aluminum in there. This is kink resistant. Design pressure of 700 psi, 180 degrees Fahrenheit. I've never used this stuff. Steve, you other guys, have y'all used any of this? Oh, that's kind of neat. It's got like a little, what was that? Was that a burring tool? Chemical and UV resistant. Mini split compression fitting. I can see those not being installed properly being a problem. But, in the day and age that we're in, where nobody flows an inert gas when they're braising like they should. Look, Coco Melon popping up. It's one of my daughter's favorite shows. But I have not used that stuff. I'm not sure if that's what you were talking about. Let me see if I can find the gas tight. Oh, yeah. Here we go. No, that's still for gas. That's not for line sets. But I would assume that's probably still what you're kind of talking about. Is this it? It's still the same brand as the other stuff, but it said gas tight in there somewhere. Anyway, oh yeah. Manufacturer is Tight Flex Corporation Gas Tight. Okay, so yeah, so I'd assume this is the stuff you're talking about. I've never used it, but I do remember chatting with the guy one night that said that they use it and that they liked it. So, if it works well, I could definitely see it being a good option. Steve says, Freon, you're part of the HVAC fam. Menace, Montana, good boiling point also. We got a lot of pros on here tonight, looks like. Some of these homeowners don't even know what you're talking about when you say boiling point. Just work. Good to see all you guys. Ryan says they showed it at the AHR Expo this year. I think it's a long time coming. I think that it is probably, I know I probably won't make any friends saying this, but brazing copper is, it's the same technology we had, almost 50 years ago, right? I mean, yeah, 50 years ago, back in the 70s. So they were brazing. So, it would be nice to see something come along to be a good alternative. I just can't speak to whether or not that stuff is it, right? I mean, it would be nice to see something, come along. I know a lot of guys like the, what's it called? The crimp stuff. Zoom lock, I think it's called. But I had a guy tell me not long ago to make sure you're at least using the stuff that has the double O-rings, because if you use the single O-rings, he has seen a lot of them leak as, the seasons change. I think all of them, you need to make sure you're taking special care. And I know a lot of guys will use soft solder. I have a YouTube video coming out soon where we compare soft solder to brazing. And I will say this, a lot of manufacturers do not want you using soft solder on their systems. They don't want the flux in there. Josh says, Josh, welcome to the show. I bet you're handsome. Most Joshes are. Have never had any issues with R22B. Another vote for new 22. Leon says these new construction companies love using them. Feed like 10-inch to the box and feed. So he's still talking about the cheese boxes. Problem is those companies have never heard of turbulence. Yeah. Turbulence, friction, restriction, static, all that stuff, airflow. A lot of companies don't even care. They're just, as long as it blows, as long as it cools the house long enough for them to get paid, they stop answering their phone later, right? Brian says, I had that system. The dampers, when open, would block half of the air. When I added my 700 square foot attic and adjusted the duct, it dropped my bill. Ryan says, had my 18-year-old system PM this weekend with the YouTuber HVAC Technology, and it scored green on MeasureQuick. You should reach out to Cortland for this show. I told him about your channel. I'll look him up. Tell him to reach out to me too, Ryan. We'll get him on here like we did with Tad. Josh says some mini split manufacturers strongly recommend not using AutoFan due to poor performance. I have never heard of that. Now there is a lot of the manufacturers will have like things like, depending on what style the model is, there are such things as having a 7-degree difference, depending on what mode you have it in and such like that. But I've never heard of a manufacturer saying to avoid the auto feature, because when you go adjust, so for example, if you turn the fan all the way up, you remove the ability of that system to slow airflow and remove humidity better. It's something, now some of you may disagree. It's an argument I've had with other pros, but I know from experience that it's true. I know that I've had customers have mold in a closet because the system is cooling the space too fast. And I explain to them what I'm explaining now, get them to use the auto feature on their remote control on their mini split. And, you know, in the grand scheme of things, that mini split in some spaces is probably oversized, right? A 6K BTU mini split, half a ton, is still probably too big for some of the little bedrooms that we see guys install them in. But you've got to leave that thing in auto mode, because if you go adjusting the fan, you are removing the ability of that system to ramp up and down. And ramp down and remove that humidity, slow the airflow and remove that humidity. Emery says, what can be done with copper thieves who steal the fittings from HVAC units? Well, using these the line sets that Ryan just pointed out. There you go. Use those line sets. No, I think we talked about a story on the show where a guy had installed a heating and air system and came back the next day to finish up, and overnight they had gone in there and stole all the copper and everything from the outdoor unit. Which is crazy that we live in a world that you can't even install a heating and air system anymore without somebody stealing from you. And you can't protect your property anymore, right? Because then you'll be on the news for that. You'll be the bad guy. So it's just a crazy world we live in. Brian says, Brian Orr, who's that? I have no idea. I'm just kidding. Brian Orr did his house with ductless, had to force powerful mode. When close to satisfied, the coil temperature will rise above the dew point and below room temperature. Got it. Leon says, trying to dumb down the labor with no brazing. Getting back to those line sets. Yep, that Python stuff, no way ever. Josh will never use that stuff. Brian says it's the same as yoga. I have the ad from ASHRAE. Ryan says, ionization is kind of worrisome to me since you don't know what the ions are being created. I just prefer forced air and a large media filter for purification and filtration, carbon filter, or for odors. It's something that a lot of guys, in fact, it's something that Brian Orr has talked about on his show, where a lot of guys there's all these ionizers, and no one actually knows the long-term effects of some of these things. I can tell you this, though. I have seen the air meters, right? So the CPS has one that we use from time to time. There's these air monitor meters that you can set up and test the air. And I've seen those meters set up. Let me show you what I'm talking about. CPS. So I've seen these set up. So like this guy right here, and it will test the air. And you look on this person's phone here, it'll give you kind of a reading of, what it's seeing, the particulates in the air, the CO2, all the, relative humidity, all the different measurements that it'll give you. This is a good picture too. VOCs. And I have seen homes that were failing those tests, and then they install an iWave, and then it passed those tests. Now, I'm not sponsored by iWave. I have had conversations with New Calgon about sponsoring our channel. I only work with companies that I like their products, and I do like some of their products. And but they have not sponsored. They have not paid me to say any of this, but I've seen the iWave installed, and then it passed these tests with these air testers. So I think it's something to be concerned about. I'm not saying it's not, especially if you install one and then all of a sudden you're getting a scratchy throat or headaches or things like that. But let me see if I can. So like there's this video here. Again, not a sponsor of mine.
Are you happy with your home's indoor air quality? Have you noticed odors from pets, cooking, or from your air conditioning system? Are you tired of seeing sunbeams or tiny floating particles in the room? Are static electricity shocks an issue in your home? If you experience any of these issues, then you need an iWave air ionization system. iWave delivers cleaner, fresher air for you and your family to enjoy. iWave installs in your air conditioning or heating ventilation system, helping to treat the air throughout the home. iWave reduces certain bacteria and viruses, and it reduces odors, smoke, static electricity, and dust particles in the air. Unlike other technologies, iWave requires no bulbs or replacement parts. iWave's technology generates the same ions as nature creates with lightning, waterfalls, and ocean waves. iWave is UL 867 ozone standard certified to produce no unsafe levels of ozone. When these ions are injected into the airstream, they reduce certain VOCs, pollutants, and airborne gases. The ions created by this technology attach themselves to smoke, odors, airborne particles, and more. When this occurs, the particles continue to cling to each other until they are heavy enough to be moved by the air current and caught by the air filter, resulting in a reduction of airborne particles. When the ions are emitted into the airstream, they will reduce certain viruses and bacteria. Contact with ions has microbicidal effects on certain viruses and bacteria, which ultimately disrupt their surface proteins and render them inactive. A simple demonstration shows how iWave prevents certain bacteria from growing on bread over time. This shows how iWave reduces certain bacteria downstream of the device, at the coil, and in the living space. Another demonstration shows how iWave products remove smoke and fine particulate from the airstream within a short period of time. When choosing an iWave air ionization system for your home, we offer 3 choices. The iWave R is a self-cleaning device.
All right, so enough of that. So anyway, I'm not sponsored by them, but again, I have seen them installed. I think that it is something to be concerned about. Again, if you have it installed and you start to have symptoms like a scratchy throat or headaches or something like that, but I have one in my own house. I would not do one if I thought that they were a huge safety risk. Now, I could eat those words later, but I have again seen tests done to the home before and after an ionizer is installed and seen that it does make the air quality better, So I don't know, let me know your thoughts on that. Is that still not still just too much of a hurdle for you to get there? And I hear you. I'm not saying there's a right or wrong on that. I'm just letting you know how I feel about that. Josh says my sales guy tried to sell it to me, not happening. I think he's still talking about the line sets we were talking about. Copper is still the best for water piping, even though the plumbers use PEX. I used to use what is the best, not the fastest, Steve Lav style. So why do you think it's best, Josh? Because I will say, if we're gonna go into the plumbing side of things, there is a such thing as acidity in water, and it will eat the copper. I've seen copper within 10 years at a property in Harrisonburg, Virginia. They were having a ton of issues because of the acidity in the water, and it was making the copper paper thin. Like we couldn't even reuse the stuff. You would try to tie on to the old copper, and it was so thin that it was like crumbling. If you tried to, solder to it or compression fitting to it, whatever we tried to do, it was a nightmare. It was quite the pickle. So, but to each their own. I'm just saying. Talk to the higher ups at Bosch, and they will confirm this. I'm not. If we're talking about, well, anyway, I'll keep my mouth shut on that. Leon says, I'm sure all had a poor performance once or twice. There are CFM ratings for a step of an indoor wall unit's fan. You can match that CFM close to the room's BTU and leave it there. I think they're now talking about the mini splits. It's kind of tough when I get behind on the chat, because then I'm catching up on things that I talked about, and it's almost kind of, it's kind of a where we're talking circles on certain things, which is fine. It's just part of the deal, right? Do you recommend an odor blocker or odor reducing product for mini splits? Sometimes when I first turn mine on, it has a smell that goes away in a few minutes. I have installed UV lights in mini splits and seen success. Just realize they're not as strong as a typical UV light that has UVC light emitting. And that's because the light does emit from the unit. If you do go that route, though, just realize that light does escape the unit in a lot of cases. So you've got this mini split that's almost lit up like a Christmas tree in your space. And so make sure if you do go that route, you get one of the ones that have the little switch on there, so you could turn it off at night if you need to, or turn it off when you are spending time in that space and then turn it back on when you're not there. It just kind of depends, but just be aware of that. They do make ionizers for mini splits as well, but I don't have quite as much of a track record with those as I do the UV lights. Ryan, are you installing brands that have the self-cleaning mode? This helps immensely. Bosch wall units will ice up on purpose and then melt away to self-clean. Interesting. Yes, it's a Daikin. It has a cleaning mode. Haven't used yet. By default, that mode was off. Yeah, well, and that unit's pretty new too, right, Ryan? So I would be a little concerned, but if you need to do it, do it. I'd be curious if it does does it clear weed smell? You guys. Leon, you're on your own there. Newcon makes a product called the New Shield that is UL 2998 ozone free, which is better than the iWave ozone certification. Weird since both are made by New Calgon. I've been told that there's not a lot of difference between the two. Just one's one color and one's another, but they both use the same technology. But I could be wrong on that, Ryan. That's just what I've been told. Leon says it's a GMC Chevy situation. You need a generic to your top line. I might get the iWave M for the mini split that is UL 2998 ozone free certified. I have installed them, but again, I don't quite have the track record with those to be able to say whether or not it would be able to take care of your, your odor issue. I own the iWave, don't sell. Leon says JMU. That's I used to go to JMU every weekend when I was in high school. That was when we were in high school. That's where we would go hang out. Go hang out with the college kids. Josh says the home should have a water treatment system. Well, woulda, shoulda, coulda. And it wasn't a home. It was actually an apartment complex. So this entire property, we're talking, I think that, and it was a large apartment complex. So we're talking probably 600 apartments or more. And they all had the same issue. Brian says Viper pan and drain is great. How do you feel about pro pressing copper fittings? If we're talking about plumbing, I think they're great. I've used them a lot. If we're talking about you're talking about the Zoom lock or some of the other products for HVAC. I have friends that love them. I have not used them a lot, but as I said a moment ago, I have a friend that he's a rep for a top manufacturer, and he's had a front row seat to a lot of them failing. And he highly recommends the ones that have the 2 O-rings in there. I don't know if that is still the same brand. Double O-ring. Let's see if what this pulls up here. Trying to see if I can find. I'm not. Is this it? RLS makes them, maybe. Oh, here we go. So these look like streamline refrigeration press fit and press fit, and it looks like they have the double O-rings there. So just that's the one thing he was telling me. He said, "Hey, if any of the contractors that we train at the company I work with now, if any of them go this route, to make sure that they're using the fittings that have 2 O-rings inside." Again, not a sponsor of mine. I'm just repeating something from somebody that has a lot more experience with this than I do. So if you do get ProPress, especially if it's on your own home, Brian says I use RLS for every flare. But yeah, just make sure you're using the double O-ring stuff. Leon says I ran 300 foot of 1-inch gas pipe and mega pressed it. Took half a day run and paint. Is that good? It sounds like that's pretty good. Half a day to run 300 feet. But you know, maybe you're saying that's not good. That sounds pretty good to me. Let's see. We've been rolling tonight, guys. We haven't even got a chance to do any of our breakout segments. Again, tonight I was planning to have a guest, and so I had not lined up any of our segments. We did do a news for the day. Let me pull up. Give me just a moment here. I will pull up one of my favorite segments here. See, make sure I've got something lined up for it. I think this should be good. Bear with me. Oh, I think I already showed you guys this one. Hold on. Yeah. This is good. Oh, is it not going to let me? Oh, come on. I had we were going to do a crazy clip one, but this one's not showing up. See if I can find it this way. Bear with me. Don't lose me. Or don't let me lose you. How about that? Oh man, I had a great video lined up for you guys. And they were showing one of those new electrical brazing tools where they just wrap it around it. You don't have to have the flame. They just wrap it around it. It heats it up really fast. The joint brazes within seconds, and then you get the heat off of it. It's really neat, the technology that they're able to use to do that, but I'm not seeing it, that video that I had lined up. So what a shame. They use induction heating to do that. Maybe this one will work. Yeah, see how he's got it wrapped around, and then there's that. Look at that. So there's no flame, and all he does is put that little tip over it. So I was supposed to play my crazy clip. We're all out of whack, but that's my crazy clip for tonight. Isn't that neat? Something new. They've had that technology for years, but it's more and more prevalent, especially in factories. But I have seen where guys have done things out in the field with it. It's pretty neat how they can do that. So I said, don't let me lose you. And it looks like I lost a bunch of people. Oh, man. I'm not going to change who I am. And I lost another one too. So Josh says, peace out, dinner time. Yeah, I had a guest lined up for you guys. I will to go ahead and take a minute while I still have some of you here and let you guys know that we do have a amazing guest next week. One of the top executives at Daikin will be joining us live. She'll be taking questions. She's head of make sure I got this right. I think she's head of all the residential equipment. I could be wrong on that. Um I think there's the way they have it split up. One of them is in charge of, I think it's heat pumps. She's in charge of all the heat pumps, and another guy's in charge of all the furnaces. Maybe I don't know. I'm sure she'll fill me in. She'll let me know, but she's basically the product manager for all of that. So she's going to know what's up, and we're going to ask her some tough questions and get some good answers for you guys. And you guys will be able to answer some or ask her some questions as well. We won't be able to get to all, as usual. When we have a guest, we usually will field a few questions and then some we won't. So I do my best to get to all the questions when it's just me, but sometimes when it's just us hanging out with a guest, we don't get to everything. So just realize that, but definitely be here next week. That's going to be a good one. Her name is Sally, and she is a really smart lady. So definitely be here next week, 8:30 p.m. Eastern. Steve says, how do you protect against cottonwood or other contaminants getting into an outside unit? Let me make sure I understand what you're asking here. Cottonwood. Okay, yeah. So you're just talking about I think you're talking about this stuff right here. I've seen YouTube videos where people have like tried to eat that stuff and they regret it. Yeah, so I think a couple things on that. The first thing is I would not do anything that you are not, you shouldn't be doing. But if you feel comfortable turning off your system and, spraying that coil down, keeping it clean, I'm not saying that replaces good preventative maintenance, but if you've got a buildup of that on the coil, and you've got trees like that nearby, I think that's part of it. I think the second thing is just simple, avoiding certain issues when you go to set the outdoor unit, doing your best to be mindful of that. I saw somebody, and I've seen it multiple times, but I saw somebody just a couple weeks ago where they had set the outdoor unit near the dryer vent. And I mean like a foot away, and the whole backside of that coil was full of lint. And it's like, come on, man, what are you doing? Think here, think a little bit. So that's part of it. And then, I will say, there is something to be said for these units are designed to be outside. It's not the end of the world if some of this stuff does get in there. You do want to, do your best to keep it clean, keep the coil clean, keep the bottom of the unit clean so it can drain properly. But at the end of the day, they do think there is such thing as sacrificed loops at the bottom of the coil, because they understand that. So if something's going to degrade over time, then they give it some sacrificial loops down there. So that's a real thing. But, just be mindful of those sorts of things. But other than that, life happens. There's going to be times when certain things are going to get in there that you don't want in there. Craig says, what's your opinion on having a separate return grill in a bedroom that seems to be getting very cold if the door stays closed all day? Well, I mean, if you can add it, I have a house like that. I have a house that gets very cold very hot in the winter and very cold in the summer. And I love it in the summer because I like for my bedroom to be really cold. But the issue is there's no return on that side of the house. And so it gets a lot of positive airflow that it'll do a positive pressure on that end of the house. And it's just simply not good for the airflow of the system anyway. But if you can get a return in there for better comfort, then I think more return is better than less. typically. Gary says, great show, Josh. Lots of activity among our friends. Have a good week. Look forward to the next one with the guests. Thanks, Gary. Always good to see you guys. As we wrap up our show tonight, guys, we still are going to field our last questions here. If wherever you are in the country, we know there's some bad apples out there, right? There's some companies giving our industry a bad name. If you know a good heating and air company, a good electrician, or a good plumber, please feel free to drop their name. There's so many bad ones. Let's show some love to the good ones in our chat. Who are they and where are they located? Share that in the chat, and we will show those guys some love as we wrap up our show tonight. You never know. You never know when somebody in your area might see your comment, and you might be able to throw those folks some business as well. Steve says, trying to capture the heat with a heat pump. Ryan says, schedule your preventive maintenance around when the cottonwood trees do that so the professional can clean it. That's a good idea. Cottonwood clogs condensers like a large German Shepherd long hair. Yep. Yeah, we don't have a lot of cottonwood around where I live, but what I see a lot of folks do is they're not mindful at all when they're mowing their grass. So that unit's out there steadily pumping, steadily running, trying to provide AC during the hot summer day. And then there you are out there blowing grass up the side of the unit as it's running. So it's even pulling that grass even better up on that coil. And a lot of folks don't realize the harm they're doing when they do that. So, just killing that power and spraying that coil down would do a world of help. Anyway, I'm not a DIY guy, so I'm not going to get into all of that. So anyway, we've got some cool videos coming up as well. Make sure you stay tuned for that. As we get closer to the summer, I always switch gears, right? So as we get closer to winter, I'll usually start to try to be mindful of that, try to do more furnace type videos, more heat pump type videos. And then as we get closer to the AC season, I start to do more videos pertaining to air conditioning and the troubleshooting and dealing with contractors around air conditioning. Steve wants to know, anyone know a good HVAC person or company in Dayton, Ohio? So if you're in or near Dayton, Ohio, make sure you share a comment in there. If you see this video in the future, Steve, keep a lookout. Maybe somebody will drop an answer to that question as a comment on this video. So if you know any good companies in the Dayton, Ohio area, I personally don't. I've helped folks in Cleveland before on our website, New HVAC Guide, but I don't think I've ever helped anyone in Dayton. So I don't want to steer you the wrong way. If you don't find anybody, I still think Google's one of the best places to look. I know a lot of people like to use some of those other websites, not realizing that some of those websites you can pay to be higher to be represented better on those websites. And Google kind of has that now too, right? They've got that guaranteed program, I think is what they call it, Google Guaranteed. But yeah. Ryan says fire and ice in Columbus, Ohio. They might have an office there. So Ryan's throwing one out there. So good stuff. Again, thanks guys. Make sure you're here next week. We're trucking right along. We're getting closer and closer to the heat. And, they used to always say on Game of Thrones, winter is coming. Instead, here on our channel, we say summer is coming. So summer is coming. And we've got some good stuff lined up for you guys. So make sure you're here next week. In a few weeks, I'll go ahead and highlight this as well. Any of you guys out there that are a Ty Brannaman fan, I am. I love his content. He has a YouTube channel called Love to HVAC, and I think it would probably be safe to say if he's not the smartest guy on YouTube, he's in the top 3. He will be on our show in a few weeks, and so I'm really excited about that. And we're gonna ask him some tough questions. We're gonna put him on the spot. I'm just kidding. Maybe that's why Jen wasn't here tonight. She was scared I was going to put her on the spot. I don't know. But anyway, thank you guys. Thank you for your support. We will be back next week, 8:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's 5:30 p.m. Pacific. Find out what that time is in your time zone. In the meantime, make it a great week, and we will see you then. Take care.